am known as a shill for many things. Wayland, sometimes Rust, and of course, the cosmic desktop. So when you combine all three, what do you get? Well, I don't know, the king of shills, I guess? Jokes aside, yes, there is still a lot of work to be done on the cosmic desktop. This is the reason why I am not daily driving it as it currently stands. I probably will be, hopefully, by the beta if all things are going well. Now, the beta, we'll see when that happens, because the date that Carl laid out, well, let's just say it was very optimistic. Maybe too optimistic, because now we've overshot that date. I think a more realistic beta window is something like May or June. Obviously, they could go into beta earlier and then decide they want less in the first release, but for things that should be there, like basic functionality, I would say May or June is a lot more likely. Moral of the story, don't be like GIMP. Do not say dates until you know things are absolutely going to happen. So, here we have Cosmic Alpha 6, Big Leaps Forward. There are a lot of really cool additions that were made in this release, things that I had not tested yet as they were not available in the last Git release I used, but I am very, very excited to play with some of them. The first one, you can already see it, desktop zoom. Now, I personally don't need desktop zoom to function. I have it enabled because it is useful sometimes in videos, and I like to test it. There are some people out there where desktop zoom is non-negotiable. By default, it is bound to super equals to zoom in and super minus to zoom out. The reason why it's not super plus is because the plus is on a shift layer, so super equals just makes more sense. Or if you prefer, you can use super and then mouse scroll. I would like to be able to disable specifically this. Sometimes I press the super key, I move my scroll wheel, maybe I'm using other bindings. I don't want to accidentally zoom in. For people that use this, having that as an option is nice, but this specific thing should be toggleable. And of course, because the people implementing desktop zoom or magnifier, whatever you want to call it, very likely are not people that actively need it, there are naturally going to be problems upon first implementation, and that's what this is. It is first implementation, and this is not a fault against Cosmic, it's just naturally what happens with new features. So, right now, if you zoom in and out way too quickly, which is not something you're normally going to do, normally you zoom in, and then you're done zooming in, you can crash the entire compositor, which obviously should never happen. That's clearly a bug. Also, the hitbox of the cursor seems to misalign when you zoom in a lot. So it can be really hard to click on cancel the zoom. And right now there isn't actually a binding to disable all the zooms. So if you want to go and do so, you would have to zoom back out to 100%, which isn't a big deal, but it would be nice to just have the option to disable all the zoom without having to do so. And we also have this meta issue from Richie. If you don't know Richie, I've had him on the podcast a couple of times. He is legally blind. He needs to use his desktop around like 70 or 80,000% zoom. So basically, he's the kind of person where zoom is very, very important to work well, and there's a couple of things where, you know, because the people that made it don't use desktop zoom, they missed as things that are probably useful. Like, one thing, the zoom level they have is way too low. But this is just first implementation, so I have no doubt that as time goes on, this is going to get better. Now, I am not a desktop icons enjoyer, but it is nice to have them there, and they have been present in Cosmic for quite a while now, but they are being improved. Right-clicking an empty desktop and selecting desktop view options opens a settings window for your desktop. This settings window was already here. Show or hide desktop folders, drives, or the trash. I don't believe there was the option to toggle there being a trash folder or drives. I don't think that was there. I think the only option we had was show or hide the folders and the files. You can also adjust icon size and spacing between icons from this window. This is also nice because previously the spacing was tied to the global spacing setting, but I felt like the icons on the setting that I use were way too close together, so I would like to separate them a bit more, and now that is an option you do have here. This window also has a problem of spawning behind other windows. So if you have a browser open, for example, you try to open up your desktop settings, and maybe you open it up in the center of your screen, it will never be raised above the browser, because effectively what the window is a sub window of your desktop. It's not actually a real window, it's part of the desktop window effectively. This is known about and has not been fixed yet, but will be fixed later. Also, the desktop works like a desktop, so if you want to drag files from a file manager onto the desktop, that is also going to work now. But not every change is good though. And in what might be the weirdest UX choice I have ever seen, additional scaling options. An additional scaling setting has been added to scale the screen slightly from 5% to 20% larger. For example, on a display set to 125% scaling, those desiring larger text can use this setting to increase scaling to 130, 135, 140, and 145. So you have the scale setting. This is applied to your display. And then there is a second option that applies more incremental scaling. Now, you might be thinking, why not use a slider? Use a slider with like 5-point increments and then mark the major scales. Yeah, why not do that actually? I don't know, because they do have sliders in libcosmic. I don't know. I don't know at all. Now, I know this is probably going to be a situation of, oh, this is present in the Figma, this is why it was implemented like this. Change the Figma. It's wrong. Use a slider. This is not good. Okay, I said it's the worst UX I've ever seen. There are worse things, like I've seen a slider used for telephone numbers, but that was made as a meme. This is intended. Now let's talk workspaces. Workspaces have always been present in Cosmic, and workspaces are great. I use them quite actively on KDE. I don't like the way they're implemented. I do like on Cosmic that you can have individual workspaces for each of your monitors. You have the option of having them merged together, but I like them being individual. But that's always been there. Here's what has been added. You can now scroll between workspaces in the overview as a quick, easy way of navigating to your intended destination. I don't know how that wasn't there before. I thought it was, but maybe I was just imagining it. Clicking on the preview of the current workspace or empty workspace in the workspace overview will allow you to exit the workspace view. So if you want to go click on this one here, it'll take you to that workspace and then take you out of the view. Good feature. I don't really use the mouse and workspace overview as a way to navigate around, but I know a lot of people do. Previews for horizontal workspace now include the name and number. Hopefully that means at some point in the future we'll get the ability to rename them. Again, not a feature I use very actively, but I know there's a lot of people out there that like their workspaces to be for specific things and make it very clear it's for that thing. Workspace previews on rotated displays will show the correct orientation, so there's been a lot of vertical monitor problems on Cosmic. Yeah, so this is a vertical monitor here. This is the way it was showing in the workspace preview, which, you know, it's showing the entire monitor, but it's showing it wrong. Right? It's not supposed to do that. If you have it on the side, it does the same thing, just on the side instead. And the last workspace is now removed if it follows another empty workspace. That might sound kind of confusing. I reported this issue quite a while back. Basically, what was happening is when you first opened up Cosmic, there would be 2 workspaces available, but the Cosmic rule is you should always have 1 more workspace than the workspaces you have with Windows on them. So if you have no Windows open, there should only be 1 workspace present. If you have a window on workspace 1, there should be 2 workspaces. If you have a window on workspace 1 and 2, there should be 3 workspaces. But when you open up Cosmic and there was just 2 workspaces available, because technically that other one wasn't real, if you tried to swap to that second workspace, it would be immediately deleted and send you back to the first one, which is a bit disorientating and shouldn't be done. It was clearly a bug, and there's a bunch of other weird cases where empty workspaces were just being spawned for no reason. Minimized windows can now be dragged and dropped between workspaces, while windows can be moved to another display by dropping them in the workspace overview. So you can basically drag windows around the workspace overview, which, again, is one of those features which needed to be there, but it's not one that I like to use because I tend to do things with hotkeys. Dragging a window out of a stack will match expectations and no longer move the entire stack. So Cosmic has this ability to make every single window a tabbing window, so you can just put a bunch of windows together, but apparently they were moving if you dragged something out of the tab stack, which obviously should not have happened. And window titles in the overview are now at the top left of the window and match the user's theme. Additional workspace features, including pinned workspaces, will be in a future update. Again, I don't think pinned workspaces are a full solution to static workspaces, but it's better than nothing. Windows gravitate to edges. This finally is here. This is window edge snapping. I use it a lot in KDE when I'm using floating windows. I don't want to have to go and like manually line up with the edge of the screen. Having it be able to just snap directly to it, very, very nice. Now, one thing I will say with this is I would like to see this be configurable, because as it stands, I don't particularly like the distance they have here. It works. Don't get me wrong, it certainly works, but I like a more aggressive snap than what is here. So maybe like KDE has, where you can adjust the distance that it will snap to the side. And they clearly have a variable that is attached to the threshold, so I'd be very surprised if it wasn't at least available in the config files, but having it in the actual settings would be nice. Now, there does come a point where having too many things in the settings becomes a problem. But look, I'm going to be biased here. I think this is a very important thing to have in the settings, or at least once the documentation comes around, I guess not a big deal, but at least for now, settings would be nice. Now, the launcher. It has fixed one of the biggest issues that it had. It now has a scroll bar. So it's actually functional, because previously, if there were too many things being shown, you just couldn't access them, like, at all. You'd have to, like, change the thing you're searching for to make it, like, more, you know, filtered, which for a lot of things works. But if we're talking about filtering windows you have open, and you have, I don't know, a bunch of terminals open or a bunch of browser windows open, very quickly this became literally unusable and was just non-functional as a launcher. So, scroll bar, very good. Also, if you use the launcher to do things like power off, restart, and logout, there will now be a countdown timer matching the behavior of the power applet. So if you instead did it with the widget in the panel, now these behave in the same way. I don't even know how you manage to have them not behave in the same way. That makes it sound like the backend code for these functions is different, which I don't know why they would be. That seems like something that you would abstract out and use the same function or the same, like, binary or however you're handling it for both things. Cosmic Files now has file path completion, a thing that basically needed to be there for a file manager. If you're just like, navigating around, clicking through folders, yeah, it's fine. But if you like to type your way through paths, absolute requirement. Copying a file allows pasting the file path in other applications. This is a feature that I never actively use, and the only time I actually use it is when, for whatever reason, a file drag is not working, and it just, puts the path there instead. I'm sure there are reasons why you would want this feature. It's just not for me, but hey, it's nice to have there. Cosmic Files uses home and end keys for navigating the app. Nice to see. I like more hotkeys. You can now compress and extract password protected zip files, and drag selecting will scroll the content window. This is nice to have, but when you have a big folder and then being able to go, woo, very nice to have. Not having that there, again, annoying. Copy and paste using middle mouse button has been implemented. I knew you could paste. I didn't know copying was a thing with middle mouse. Is that it? Huh. The more you know. I didn't know there was a thing that existed in anything. Maybe I'll actually use it. The media player is becoming more of a media player. It now has a navigation bar for viewing folders in a tree view to display the video files open in the media player. That's nice. File menu options have also been completed. Frankly, I do think a lot of this direction they've gone with the media player is a lot of just kind of reinventing the wheel. I don't know why they didn't just make an MPV skin. I know, Rust, all that stuff. But MPV is just such a good tool. And I know they're doing GStreamer and that works great. Yeah. But I don't even MPV. Just use MPV. I'm not here to trash the work they've done here. It just feels like doing something that really didn't need to happen. I don't think they needed to have a media player built into Cosmic. But moving on, when you play music, it will show the metadata of the file. So title, album, artist, things like that. It doesn't show the album artwork. I believe that's part of the metadata. I could be misremembering. It's been a while since I've messed around with music metadata. Song lyrics, that would be cool. I don't actually know the standard for how those are handled, and I don't believe they're typically distributed with the music files anyway. One thing that is nice, though, is Empress control. This is the way that media controls are normally done on Linux, so you can use just generic media control applications. Typically, the bindings on your keyboard, assuming they've hooked them up correctly, should be working. And Cosmic Edit, their text editor, has gotten a lot better as well. Revert all changes feature has been added to Cosmic Edit to revert everything back to the most recent saved state, rather than just having to close the file, not save it, and then reopen it. That's kind of annoying to do. If you decide to scrap everything or start a new file from scratch, go to File, Close Project to remove the project from the navbar and bring up a new document and tab. When multiple tabs are open, cycle project tabs using Control Tab and Control Shift Tab shortcuts. Zoom has also been implemented, so you can zoom in on the text. This is done with Control Plus or Control Minus shortcuts. Reset back to default using Control 0. Pretty standard shortcuts. I know pretty much every DE is going to have a text editor, and I know it's cool to have it there. I'm just always going to do it from the terminal, and if I want to write code, I'm probably going to use either Vim if I'm doing some basic scripting, or maybe VS Code, things like that. If I want an actual IDE, I usually go with the JetBrains suite, and it's cool this is here. There's just so many good text editors out there that whenever a desktop has one, it kind of feels like a thing where it's there because it needs to be, but how many people are actually using it? Now, I've talked about this in a separate video, but there has been a massive resource optimization. So there were some memory issues related to glibc malloc, and that has massively cut down in memory usage. There's been some memory usage improvements in various other locations. Also, there have been CPU usage improvements regarding desktop files and workspaces. Also, performance improvements for display settings and wallpaper settings. There's a lot of parts of the settings where they do live updates, and they apply things way too much and way too quickly, and things can kind of get a bit laggy. So I'm always happy to see changes like this being made. As we get closer and closer to beta, do expect to see a lot more things like this and a lot less major feature changes. There's still going to be major feature changes, but now we're in the state where a lot of optimization does start to get involved. And as always, there is a big list of miscellaneous changes here as well. Most of them aren't really that exciting, but some of them may have affected you. However, I do want to highlight a couple of interesting ones. Fixed screenshot issues on a vertical display. This is one that I and one other person did report. There is this problem, or was this problem, where... there it is. Where if you tried to screenshot a vertical monitor, this would happen. So this is like the freeze frame of the display, but half the screen is black and it's rotated the wrong way, so you can't use that at all. Same thing would happen if you tried to do a capture using something like OBS through the portals. This was supposed to be in Alpha 3. Didn't hit Alpha 3, but it has been done now. A more notable problem is the settings were busted to hell, where if you tried to close the settings, sometimes it would ignore the quit request, it would close the GUI, but it wouldn't close the process in the background. So if you tried to open up the settings again, they wouldn't be open because it couldn't make the daemon and connect them. Well, it could make the daemon, but it couldn't connect the GUI to it, so you just start spawning a bunch of fake daemons in the background. The only way to deal with it was to kill all of the processes, and sometimes that would work. Sometimes you need a full desktop restart. Now that's resolved, and it should be closing correctly. Now, I was busy last weekend. However, I do want to do another Cosmic stream. There's a lot of streams that I should be doing and would like to do and just don't do, but I will do another stream for the Cosmic Alpha. So I will probably be going and testing some of that desktop zoom stuff. I don't really know how it's going to go. I'm going to see if we can break the desktop icons, and I definitely want to see what happens with the scale options, especially when I find the settings file this is dumped into, because I want to see what happens if you manually change it to something which it's not a big fan of being set to. We'll see what happens when we get there. I expect a number of crashes in that stream, so if you want a coherent stream, not the place to be. But if you want to have some fun, come and check it out. Until then though, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon Scrub Libero Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and what do I shill next?